Hey Jamie, it's good to be back with a dose of truth. Special edition, I guess. We decided to get on and talk about the Epstein disclosure situation since that's so in the forefront of everyone's mind. I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll talk about various aspects of it. I don't really care where we start, so I'll let you kind of take it away.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much. I think we just wanted to kind of address it. And actually, there was a request from people in your chat saying
Yeah,
you guys should maybe do a show on Epstein, the tip of the iceberg, because
yeah.
for the mainstream, this stuff's kind of it really is the tip of the iceberg that's coming out. And I think not just the tip, but like they're actually showing that there's an iceberg at least. But like somebody like you has been talking about stuff way down in the iceberg for a while now. And then kind of going back through history, like some of the original people like Kathy O'Brien and stuff was in 1996 talking about the pedophile rings in government and the MK Ultra programs and stuff like that. And so, it's like people have been truth telling this actually for quite a while. But now that the Epstein stuff is coming out, it's really come into the public vernacular and it's just right on the forefront of reality for a lot of people. And for people like us, it's kind of like, oh, great. Now, finally, like we're kind of other people are coming into the reality that we've actually been in for quite a while. But yeah, for a lot of people, this is like really destroying their reality of the world they thought they lived in. And this is to them just kind of the initiation into what's actually going on. And for somebody like you, Max, who was racially abused by an institution as large as the Vatican, and like how big that actually is, like this isn't just like some little cult in a town, or you know what I mean, like this is a large organizational historically significant institution. And this and from there's the MK Ultra program in the 50s, but even before that are
A lot of you are waking up to the information being revealed in the Epstein files, though trust me, that's only the tip of the iceberg. That's only one guy who procured children for these elites and one island. This goes way deeper than you can even imagine, and it involves the entire structure of planet Earth and who runs it behind the scenes. A lot of you have questions, and I want to let you know that I have seminars on my website that might help address some of your questions. I have one on what satanic ritual abuse is, one on the Vatican and who they really are. That's where I was trafficked and put through rituals. I've done seminars on mind control and how to exit the matrix. I think we have an opportunity now that the collective consciousness is kind of expanding and we're beginning to understand that our so-called leaders are the most vile, evil perpetrators on this planet. And I think it's good that that awakening is happening. Myself and other survivors, we've been trying to say this for years. So I'm glad it's coming out because that means we can begin to end this, the abuse of children, our children on this planet. So if you want to also ask questions, I'm happy to answer them. I do a monthly live the last Sunday of every month with Kimberly from Journey to New Earth. You're welcome to come and ask questions. We're going to be talking about this. And I also have a beautiful community of Unbroken members, and we meet on a monthly Zoom, and we're going to be doing that on Saturday, the 21st of February. And this is going to be the topic of our conversation there as well. I have a lot of reels where I'm explaining and dissecting the Epstein files on Instagram, Facebook, and X, which you can check out. And I also have a lot of interviews that are free for you to watch on my website that go deep into not just survivors of these kinds of things, but whistleblowers of all kinds. We need to understand the bigger picture that supports such a thing even happening on our planet, and it's time to end it. Thanks for listening.
The MK Ultra started in, actually prior to the 1950s, but so I think people are a little bit familiar with that history. But looking back at the ancient cults doing this
Yeah.
ritual abuse since the beginning of the time, and organizations such as the Vatican, and really showing like how this has been going on for so long, and how big it actually is, and how deep this actually goes, and how far back this actually goes, is kind of just coming into the forefront. And I mean, the Epstein stuff has been out for a while, but I think the stuff coming out now, and Max, you'll have to go over some of the stuff coming out, because I said I'm actually not really right on top of it at this time. Like, I'm just waiting a little bit to go over some of it. But I was actually really surprised, actually, that they were releasing the ritual abuse aspects of it, and the actual MK Ultra stuff going on. It's not just this type of, sex trafficking ring of minors, which I think the original story coming out was kind of seen that way. And so I'm actually really glad that the truth is coming out of what was really going on, and how this connects, and how this can just give validation to people like you that have been trying to say this for as long as you have.
Yeah. So yeah, so for sure, I'm really glad that it's penetrated the public consciousness. I'm a little bit sometimes annoyed that it takes some official governmental agency releasing it for people, for people to believe it or take it in. Because, like you said, a lot of us have been saying this for years. But hey, it doesn't matter. And it is pretty stunning what they are revealing, because they are talking about. There was one, I'm not reading the files themselves, I'm reading people's analysis of them, because I can't quite bring myself to look at them. It's just too triggering. But there was one about a professor at UCLA, and whose name escapes me now, who wrote Epstein about how to ensure that infants suck more vigorously on their pacifier, which is, what that means, by making them very thirsty ahead of time. So that's pretty gruesome, the fact that that's out. They're talking about babies being cooked and eaten, which a lot of us have, whistleblown on in the past. So that's fairly deep disclosure. Um, it started out, and the kind of more common idea in the beginning was like, well, they're trafficking teenage girls. So I immediately put a reel out, said, by the way, this starts from birth. Like, they're trafficking babies and 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds and all ages. So that has since emerged as well. They're talking about breeders, which, again, pretty deep disclosure. So they're talking about young girls who are imprisoned and forced to breed babies. They're talking about the babies being violated. They're talking, I'm careful about words now on media. So, not the R word, but I'm going to say violated. They're talking about babies being sacrificed. They're talking about rituals. They're talking about Satanism. So I agree with you. It's fairly graphic and detailed, in terms of disclosure. And I just want to make, agree with you on this is an ancient cult practice. This cult has existed for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And you and I both know historically, they always sacrificed virgins, which is code for children. And in ancient ceremonies, they would have an iron effigy, or some kind of metal effigy of Moloch with a little trap door, and they would have a fire underneath, so it would get really, really hot. And then people would bring their babies and put them in, and they would be basically burned alive. And they would play music to drown out the screaming, right, of the infants as they were incinerated. So that practice was open. It was well known in the ancient world. Sacrifice, it was even in the Bible, sacrificing your firstborn and all this other stuff. And then it kind of went underground, literally under the ground, right? But additionally, I think there are so many other things in our modern world that are child sacrifice, that we maybe not don't see as such. For example, the pharma injections that children are, supposed to have from birth for the first many years of their lives, that's a massive child sacrifice right there, right? SIDS is from that. And there's many other modern day equivalents of it. So absolutely, I just wanted to say this is nothing new at all. This is the same cult. This is the same, these are the same people that have been running this planet since time immemorial. So, and they are pedophiles, they are psychopaths, they are Satan worshipers, and as part of their religion, they sacrifice children because these people steal that essence and that innocence. They're not connected to God or the life force anymore. So we're their fuel, their batteries, and their best ones are children because of their innocence and their purity. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good explanation, Max. This has always been a part of human culture through all time. There's always been sacrifice, and yeah, you're right. They just kind of pretended that it stopped, but it never has never stopped. There's always been groups of people sacrificing children, and I think for a lot of the mainstream people who aren't really familiar with like dissociative identity disorder or ritual abuse, I don't know if they're aware of like that it's a means to an end. It's not just something that people do. I mean, they do enjoy their perversions, but it actually is goal orientated. The whole a lot of what they're doing, they want to be breeding humans to be a specific way. And so with all of the research on behavioralism, genetic modification, gene editing, like they're always trying to create a human or a human type being that's been modified to basically be a perfect slave is the goal of what they're doing. And so, training a child from birth and keeping it in isolation where it doesn't know that it has rights, it doesn't know it's a separate person, it doesn't know that there's a reality that exists where it's not a slave to serve its master, is really what these people like doing. And so, one of the main ways they do it is by creating dissociation and amnesia in the mind so that a person is a slave without knowing they're a slave and can be accessed anytime. And so I think that's going to be kind of the next curve for the public to go to. I think the first one was just like, okay, some of these politicians are pedophiles. Okay, there are maybe some trafficking rings. Okay, there are some cult activities. Okay, there is the MK Ultra. There's some mind control. But like when they really start to see what's going on is a breeding program and then using trauma to basically sculpt what they've bred into what they want them to be, which is a slave system and a slave society, and then it's been done en masse. And so when they're kind of revealing this out and you start to see like how big it actually is, it's like they've made a generation of slaves through trauma. And so there's actually a lot of people on the planet right now that are dissociative that don't know that they are, that may have been part of one of these breeding programs or be part of some type of trauma that they have repressed. And like they've just done it on such a mass scale. It is the tip of the iceberg to let this out. And I'm actually really surprised that they're letting out what they are, because I don't remember any other kind of criminal forensic stuff that hasn't gone to trial yet being out in the public. Like I'm not sure. It's really surprising to me that things would be released without even with the Picton farm and stuff. There's still major media bans and stuff on all of that information about that in Canada. So I'm not sure really how they're letting out all of this information to the public. Like to me, that in and of itself is interesting that they're allowing this level of stuff to come out. You know.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too. I have some theories on that. But first, I just wanted to agree with you that I think the bigger picture that will hopefully come into view is that the sexual abuse of a child, and as that Nazi research proved, specifically before the age of 5, is the best formula to create a mind-controlled slave. And our entire world, global societies, all of them, we're all kind of mind-controlled slaves. I mean, the fact that we submit to the abuse and oppression and harvesting of all these governments and entities and agencies that do whatever they want, and we just kind of, fearfully comply. shows you right there how successful that's been. Not to mention, no one knows the real history of the planet because it's all a lie. You know, the educational system was created by Rockefeller here. Um, and it was to inculcate people with a completely false reality. So I think all of this will eventually lead to the understanding that we basically live in a constructed matrix and that most of everything in our world is fake, including like our food and, you know, that we're being poisoned. So it's some of the Epstein file, one of the Epstein file things that I saw was Bill Gates sending an email to someone saying, you know, talking about planning the COVID pandemic. So that's interesting too, because now people are going to put all these things together. And so my hope, like you, is that people will understand that literally everything is a scripted psyop in reality, right? It's not just some, you know, satanic pedophile people, you know, raping and eating children. Um, it's bigger than that, right? So, in terms of why this has come out, you know, you and I have been talking about it, I've been talking with other people. I have noticed in the last few years that there is a shift in consciousness. It's rising, it's expanding. I have held out this hope that although they have reset us many times in the past, that this time isn't going to work. I've seen the failure of it with the COVID pandemic that was supposed to get us into vaccine passports. We're still not in digital ID or digital currency. And I think if they could have had us there, we would be there right now. So I've been observing the system kind of not executing their agenda, the transhuman agenda that you and I have talked about. And so I'm wondering if their AI, if their system is glitching, number one, but also if I'm wondering if they haven't executed everything also because maybe they're not fully in control of the financial system anymore. I've seen evidence of that. I can't say that for sure, but perhaps they are infighting each other as their system kind of glitches and they're losing control. So is it that they're blackmailing each other? Is it that the cult that's always, you know, it's always been different factions and they've worked together against us, but are they infighting now? So are they releasing stuff on each other, which is good for us, you know, that's kind of, I think, my most theory is that they're beginning to cannibalize each other and fight each other. And so they're, you know, it's like, you know, two kids in a playground that one slaps the other and the other slaps the other back. So I don't know if that's true, but that's my thought.
Yeah, and the fact that they're all narcissists is, you know, like it
Yeah,
would be really hard for them not to retaliate when
right.
somebody takes you know, a slap shot at one of you know what I mean? Like it's like if once that starts, it really never stops, the backslapping and forth. Um, I've kind of said this on a few podcasts, but I want to say it again because I think it's really, really key. That I compare like humanity is like a macrocosm of the microcosm of a traumatized child's dissociative mind. And
Yes.
so we are like one mind on the planet and we're all different parts, right? And so they've basically tried to structure the society based on the model of a dissociative child with compartmentalized segmented amnesic parts. And so that's why we have things like bureaucracy and hierarchy and censorship and all of these things, because evil only makes sense when you don't have all the information. When you have all the information, evil doesn't make sense. It only makes sense in a compartmentalized thing out of context. And that's why people can do really horrible things when they don't see the big picture of what their action does. They can convince people to do really, really horrible things as long as they're only looking between these two spots. It doesn't seem like that bad of an idea. And so this is what they do with trauma-based mind control, which is the reason why there is like these Epsteins and these baby farms and these breeding programs and trauma-based mind control. It's to create dissociative people because only a dissociative person can be a slave. Nobody in their right whole mind and a sovereign mind would ever be a slave. It never would make sense to be a slave. You can only be a slave if you're fractured. And that's why they fracture people to make slaves. And so on the planet, for quite a while, they've kept humanity quite separated and censored and had a real control over information and technology and all of these things. And that worked really well for them for a long time. And so I think the biggest mistake they have ever made was releasing the internet, because once these parts, and by parts I mean each one of us, started communicating, well, then people aren't able to remain in their ignorance and do evil, because they're starting to have information come in that is they're calculating into their decision making process. And so they basically had the planet as a DID system.
Yeah.
And I was just watching a show with Emma and Fritz Springmeier, and he said something really significant that I want to repeat because it's really, really key. And I did a show with James Martinez talking about this as well, is that the AI is dissociative. And this is how they're trying to make AI be their slave of their will, because the AI is actually smarter than the people that created it. And so the only way they can maintain control of it is to segment off information from the AI. So that's the same as inside of a mind that's dissociative, that has itself sectioned off into little honeycombs of information. And so they're trying to make AI based on the model of a traumatized dissociative child. And then that's how they can control it as their slave, which is actually they're not really being successful in doing that. And then also giving the internet, they've really underestimated people's ability and actual people's care, because so many people, once they know, that they actually do care and take action. Whereas before, a lot of people that grew up like you, like where you, when you were younger, that there was no information for you. You didn't have anybody to talk to. People would have thought you were crazy if you said anything. So that kept you really, 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 really isolated. And that's how they have control over somebody. If the people had other people to talk to, like, that is their greatest fear, is people actually sharing information. And they've lost control of that. Like, too many people care, too many people know. I don't think they can refracture what's been out. And I think that's why they are releasing the Epstein tapes, because there's already too many parts that know.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I have said it somewhat differently, which is that, the collective reality is collective. So they've kept the collective dissociated and under mind control the same way. So if you look at scientifically what they've done with MK Ultra to any individual, they've done that to all of society. The Tavistock Institute talked about using future shock to herd people into the one world government. So that's part of their playbook. And even the hierarchy as I know it, if you consider it a pyramid, they always had, everything was compartmentalized. So every layer had their orders or the information they knew, but no one knew the whole picture. So even there, they had it fragmented. So that's also, so the people that are our overlords had their own overlords that also considered them to be inferior. So like, it's just a chain of events of this nature, right? So yeah, absolutely. And in terms of people are thinking, well, Epstein, Epstein Island, and I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating, that's one drop in the bucket. That's one broker. He was like he wouldn't even have been trafficking the children. The CIA traffics children and their subgroups that they have. So he would have just been the buyer of children. And then he would have had orders from the so-called elites or politicians or Hollywood or whoever for certain specific ages or, races or genders or let's bring a bunch of these to a party, and they talk in code about their pizza parties and all this other stuff. So he was just, an intermediary in a long chain of, child trafficking operation is much bigger and deeper than people realize. And he was one person and his island was one island. Okay, there are many others and many other islands, and not just islands. There's places like the Vatican. There's places, everywhere in the world where this kind of stuff is, where children are brought and trafficked. So that's also something I think people hopefully will begin to understand. Like, you're just being given a little peek right here. This is by no means the whole picture.
Yeah, they're really using Jeffrey Epstein as a scapegoat, in order to put all of the attention on him. When he is like actually in the big picture a pretty low level pimp, to be honest.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I don't know the like for sure, but I have watched videos where people have said that Jeffrey Epstein himself was a slave, and that people had seen him being given dental torture, and that he when you look at somebody with the compulsive behavior as him, like that is huge red flag. Like same with Hunter Biden, like that just compulsive like sexual activity that comes from somewhere deep in the psyche
That
that
comes
is
from trauma. Yeah.
being reenacted. So, and I'm in no way, making excuses for him, but I'm just saying like it's like you have to look at the psychology of kind of holding him up like for everybody to just focus on, and then they're going to sacrifice him and say, oh, we got the bad guy, right? When it's like, he's just like one peg in a there's a whole bunch of Epsteins, you know what I mean? And like even look at Puff Daddy, like it's not that far off. It's not, and even these circles overlap, you know what I mean? So it's not just one crazy pedophile guy, you know what I mean? It's like it's just like he just had his role, and I don't know why he's the one. Maybe there was just too much to not be able to brush under the rug, that they're like, okay, cat's kind of out of the bag, so let's just hold him up as this scapegoat. But it's even that itself is not actually the accurate truth of the matter.
Yeah. And whenever things slip out, that's their damage control, then they do sort of allow it out, but they contain it, like in this case, in this one guy. And I mean, I'm just going to say it. The guy didn't commit suicide. He's alive and well somewhere. I've heard he's in Iceland, but wherever he is, these people, that's ridiculous. But that would be a good way to kind of close it up, right? Like, oh, he's dead. He got what he deserves. It's over, but it's not.
Yeah,
He's
there's
probably
something
still trafficking children somewhere, is my guess.
There's something in Asia, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mess up the country. I think it was in Tibet or Nepal, but it's called thamsing. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but it's like a public ritual of shaming that just they know it serves the psyche of the people to like basically scapegoat somebody and have this spectacle
Yeah.
of them, of the Schadenfreude, on them, and then they make it as like theatrical as possible. It's called thamsing. Like it's an actual technique they use because they have to satisfy the public that like this person's. And so when I saw the Epstein stuff, like, I mean, obviously like rolling them out without the sheet over them and stuff, it's actually so ridiculous that that's what they would do. Like it was obviously meant for people to see. Like it was, you know what I mean? It's like the wardrobe malfunction of Janet Jackson, like as if that was not done on purpose. You know what I mean? Like that's how I think of like, oh, look, the sheet just rolled off Epstein as we're rolling him out. Like, come on, it's almost ridiculous, but it's like people kind of cling to what they want to be true to get psychic relief. So if they offer you like, oh, look, we got the bad guy, we're like rolling him out and everybody sees it, then like they want to believe that so bad that there's little imaginative part of their mind, like a little child just says, yeah, that was him and he was the bad guy. And they want to believe it so bad they do. But if they use their logical mind, it doesn't really line up. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and people, they have a hard time because literally in our world, everything is inverted. It's satanic inversion. I mean, people should really go back and read Orwell's books like 1984 and Animal Farm, because this Orwellian everything is something else and whatever. And so it's people are looking up to and worshiping certain people, and those are the worst people. You know, like people think, oh, well, if it's a Supreme Court judge, then, no, folks, they're doing these exact, they're probably in the Epstein files. I'm guessing, I haven't
Yeah,
heard yet, but, you know, or even like the Dalai Lama is in
that's a
there,
good example.
right? He's actually a CIA asset. I don't know if you knew that. I have said the popes have all participated in rituals where they, violate and sacrifice a child, and people are like, no, not the popes. And it's like, yes, the popes, yes, the presidents, yes, the heads of global agencies, yes, the high up people in pharmas and medicine and corporations, and it's those people that we're taught are the people that are like above us and we should look up to and worship. And these are the very people who are literally consuming children.
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people, this is really going to be like that reminds me of the book The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. I'm looking at it right now.
I think it is,
By
yeah.
Naomi Klein, because she talks about the shock doctrine and like how they use that on 9/11, like when people are just really their narrative of the parameters of reality. Like people think so much can happen within here, but then when stuff happens outside of it, the mind actually goes into a shock state because it can't put it in context because there's nothing to compare it to. It's gone outside of the normal reality, which is also an MK Ultra technique, again, mirrored in reality. And that people are really programmable during that. And so the thing that kind of worries me now is like I'm really happy this stuff is coming out, and I just because I think so many people have, including myself, taken so much abuse for truth telling that like it actually is like really amazing that something's coming out from somewhere else that can say, hey, look, all these people were actually trying to tell you something correct. So that I'm thankful for that. But what worries me is how many people are actually in a state of shock right now, and that they're
Yeah.
very programmable, and that they're very suggestible, and that they may go further into denial. And so again, that's why it's so important that we just keep, saying the truth over and over to people, because it's like there is a tendency in the mind, and for some people, like this is going beyond what they can construct in reality. Like it's like crazier than any sci-fi movie they've ever seen in the theater is happening in reality. And for some people that causes dissociation, which is what they do in trauma-based mind control. So it is traumatizing people, this coming out. So it's just something to sort of think about.
Yeah, and I'm concerned that because of that, people will react by being apathetic and looking the other way and not wanting to have anything to do with it. I haven't, I mean, you and I both know that a lot of these protests about this, that, or the other, like ICE and here and there, are all paid and orchestrated. Although they also probably include regular people, but I haven't seen anyone out on the street protesting this. There has been no visible out there outrage. I mean, yes, on social media and such, but my concern is that people feel so traumatized and helpless that they do nothing. And then that's going to be construed as consent. And then the people in charge are going to go, well, I guess we can get away with this, and it'll become more institutionalized. It's like what you talk about moving the Overton window, because there's a quote from George Bush Sr. from years ago, and he said something to the effect like, when people find out what we've really done, they'll lynch us in the streets. I don't see anyone getting lynched in the streets. Now, I'm not advocating violence, but if the bar if the violation and torture and sacrifice of children isn't a bar that people can unite on and be outraged on, then nothing is. Then I'm really worried for the future of the human race.
Yeah, really good points, Max. I was actually talking with a survivor the other day, and she said, a really good thing to watch for is when people dissociate the abuse of others. Like when they see somebody else being abused and they can't, like you said, they just kind of disconnect from it. That's actually a sign that they're disconnected from their own trauma. And
Well, yeah.
so and it's just something to watch for when people do that, like, because it's usually very specific, right, to the things they are either going to react to or not. And if you, again, making the comparison of an individual to society, it's like what you're explaining, where people are like okay with children being harmed and just going into this apathetic, dissociative, kind of disconnected state. Well, I wonder how many of those people are trying to avoid their own trauma. And so, it's like it's going to actually trigger quite a few people. And I think they may try to go into denial, but I think because there's so much communication now, I think denial is going to have a hard time surviving with everything coming out. But again, I think it's really important not to fall into this kind of little childlike thinking where we're like, oh yeah, they're releasing the Epstein files because they want us all to know. And like they always these people releasing the files are in the files. And so it's like understanding that again, not falling into that savior programming where the parental figures are taking care of it and releasing the files and just letting us know because we're all just a big team working on it together. Like, no, that it just like these people don't actually work that way. So they will have their own agenda and reasons, which you said may be out of like extreme desperation because of the position they're in. Like, I'm sure this is not their first choice to release the files.
It's not a benevolent thing that they released them.
Exactly. But like, so people have to be careful not to fall because it's like what you want to believe, you'll tend to be quite willing to believe if it's offered to you. So again, it's like just still sitting back and like just taking in everything like without falling into that kind of childlike, believing stuff you want to believe because it gives you relief to believe that someone else is going to take care of it. But I mean, it's kind of a double-edged thing, right? Because I'm really, really like really happy. I couldn't believe some of the stuff you told me that was on there. Like I was like, wow, really? Like that's amazing to me. And again, let's be honest here, like what they're releasing is not even the worst stuff. Like that sounds like maybe the worst stuff, but the levels of bad are beyond what most people can even imagine. It's worse than any movie you've ever seen, with the worst movie you've ever seen. Okay.
Right. There's no horror movie that could even get close to that. So yeah, no. Yeah. And that is the Savior program is so attractive because I would love it if there would be someone that would save us from all of this, right? And I see it and these are well-meaning good people. They're saying, well, Jesus will come and, these people will be dealt with and then other people believe that there are good military white hats, Trump, et cetera. And it's like, you don't understand the way the system works. Like these people are not they're not separate. They're all part of this club. They're all in on this. They've all participated in this. Otherwise, they would not be in those positions to begin with. Okay.
Exactly.
It's a prerequisite. If you're going to be the head of state, it is absolutely a prerequisite that you do a ritual where you violate and sacrifice a child. Period. End of story. That's how it is. So it's and a lot of times I think the light it's the Masonic checkerboard floor. It's the false light. So certain parts of the cult are portrayed as the light ones, but it's not the real light. It's still within that game that they're playing. And and people also in their innocence, of course, have said to me when I've disclosed things, they said, well, why didn't you call the police? It's like, you don't understand how the system works. The police work for them. Yeah, there may be some good people at the lower levels of every institution, but it's never going to get past a certain point because the cult has their people if they haven't created the institution, they've infiltrated it. So are people like, oh, the FBI folks, these people you're gonna find that they're in the files. Like, so they're not gonna arrest themselves. The justice system is run by them. They're not going to, hand down some kind of sentence to their own. It just doesn't work that way. And so I try and educate people about that. And then they get a little bit, scared and hopeless because then they're like, oh my God, then what? But I think it's important to understand that this entire system, every institution on earth is part of this satanic cult. So it's them, it's always them.
Yeah, and just to bring it back to the kind of analogy of a DID system. And so in a DID system, there are dark parts and there are persecutor parts. There are light parts and there are dark parts. That's how the system works, is because that's what keeps the parts separate, is that the dark parts are doing things that the white parts would never, ever, ever in a million years, ever do. And, so if we look at our society, if we think of ourselves as a whole, we have to look at these persecutor parts and realize like they are, and I'm in no way making any excuses for them at all or justifying. So I just want to be really careful how I say this so it doesn't trigger people that I'm in any way making any excuse, but like looking at these are the persecuted parts on our planet. And so when you're working with a person who has a DID system, you can't just ignore the dark parts, that you have to somehow work with them. And normally the way to work with them is to information share with them as well, because they're operating from a worldview where they're way that they're acting is the best calculated way for them to act with the position they're in and their limited knowledge and ignorance and darkness. Like they are in darkness. They are making decisions out of darkness. They are making decisions without empathy, which is a high level of intelligence. They are making decisions without even being connected to their own spirit or God. So they are operating from darkness, and in the darkness, they are being rational with within their own ignorance. And so something I also like about the internet and is like we're having to learn, we're having to like integrate and have co-consciousness with this darkness that we didn't know about, but they're also having to hear us. They're also not able to keep completely separate from you and from people writing books and from people making memes about the politicians and stuff. Like never in history have these people had to have themselves mirrored back by people ever in history. They've gotten to just reinforce each other's delusions and give each other little medals and tell each other they're amazing. They've never actually had what I call like the court jester, because the reason there was a court jester is so that the king wouldn't go insane from having everybody agree with him all the time. And these people are insane. They just agree with each other all the time, to the fact where they're raping babies together, like, which is absolutely insane. But because they've reinforced each other's delusions so much, like that's the world they are living in, and they're operating from fear and cowardice and only getting exhilaration through control. So like they are very, very limited conscious beings. And so they're not able to escape us. They have to know what other people think, and they have to be exposed to the light, which they can't avoid it anymore. So there is a type of communication between parts, and sometimes, there's just different ways to deal with different parts. But I think kind of thinking of an analogy, like, these dark parts, they're in darkness. They are in darkness. They are not operating in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And that leads me to want to address something else that I hear about a lot. People need to understand that these people who will violate and torture a newborn baby, people are, they cannot wrap their head around that, because it isn't a human thing. It isn't what any of us could actually do. It's anti-nature. I mean, even animals are ferociously protective of their young. So people need to understand that these folks who do this are not fully human anymore. They're not like us. They're psychopathic, which already is a degree separate from us, but many of them also have, people in Hollywood have literally said it out loud. They've sold their soul. They've taken in a chip into their brain. They're run by a hive mind. They've, or you can say they're demonically possessed, kind of same thing. So they're not like us. Kathy always says they're not like us and they don't like us, right? So it that's why it seems unbelievable to people, but people need to understand that they're not operating with the same psychology or compassion or humanness that we are, that they don't actually have that. So that's why they can commit these atrocities that, like you and I both know, we haven't even heard the worst of it. We've heard the tip of the iceberg, and that's shocking enough. So what these people are capable of is, it's beyond, but that's why they're not fully human anymore.
Yeah, they're just like a vessel for a different consciousness, whether people want to think of that as like a demonic or a different level of something.
Yes.
Like it's like overlapping dimensions where we're kind of like meeting with them in this third dimension, because we all have bodies, but there's different things behind the bodies that are different and from different frequencies. But like there's a mask that is the body that we're talking through, and we're both projecting onto each other the opposite of what we are, when that's not true. It's two parallel perceptual universes that are overlapping. And it's like I said though, it's interesting to me that like they aren't able to like really maintain their separateness anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and I think they're because it's such a slave fear system, and I think the higher you go up, the less human people are. But I think that, there's so many people, even in these organizations, that are also secretly very happy that these files are coming out and feeling relieved because they've been sitting in their little blackmail, cowardly
Yeah.
position, too afraid to do anything. And now it's like, so many of them are not really there because that's I mean, they've been programmed to be there since birth as well. And
Yeah.
it's just thinking about people's books like Svali and stuff, like from an embryo being programmed into this. And there's many people like that. These breeding programs have been going on for a long time. And you mentioned 1984, but there's also the I'm slipping my mind right now. What was the other one? Brave New World. And so that was
Yes.
actually really showing us all these breeding programs and stuff. And so like, this goes so much deeper than like people can really imagine. It's really just, I just, it's just starting to be revealed. So, just
Yeah.
we're all on this ride, and this is happening, and
Yeah.
the information is coming out. So we're all responsible for ourselves. We all have free will, and we all can play a role in this. We can all choose. You know what? You can even just choose to listen. Just like I tell people,
Yeah.
what, if you do, you know how powerful it is just to listen to a survivor, just to actually listen to their story, listen to what they said, try to believe them, even if you can't right away. Just say, I'm willing to actually hear you out. I'm willing to actually sit in neutrality and listen to what you have to say. Because you're right, Max. Like, there's so many people that have been coming out and telling this stuff, and people haven't been listening. And so I really hope that, like, this will work retroactively, where like now people, I think hopefully they'll go back and listen, and maybe read some of those older books, and listen to some of your stuff, and go back and listen to what Kathy O'Brien said in 1994 or 1996. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that book is so thorough, like naming names, places, institutions, everything. Like, you know what I mean? You could go back and cross-reference that now, and it's like, that is like a legal court testimony. And her book's not the only one. I mean, that was like one of the first ones that really went into such detail. But I hope people retroactively go back and look at what these people have been saying, because it all actually lines up and corroborates what's being said now.
Yeah. No, and I find probably 98, 99% of comments I get when I put out reels with this information is either believing and supportive, or at minimum curious and open to wanting to understand and asking fairly intelligent questions. So I'm very thrilled about it. There's always, of course, those 1 or 2% that either outright say that I'm lying, I'm making it up, that's not true. A lot of them say, "Oh, well, provide proof," which is the most ridiculous thing. It's ridiculous for two reasons. Number one, sure, as a captive, tortured child, you're going to carry around a recording device to, like what? But secondly, and more importantly, the information is out there in spades. The proof is there, and it's on you to remedy your ignorance by educating yourself. It's not on me to do that for you. Okay. So I just thought I'd mention that. But really overwhelmingly, I'm quite encouraged by the responses and the attitude of people. So I think there's much more of a receptivity now to this information, which I see in tandem with consciousness expanding and rising. And I think the mind control is breaking down. And it's interesting because we've seen survivors coming out of the woodwork in the last decade or so. And that also tells me that despite their best efforts, the mind control breaks down. Many of us have escaped it. And I think the collective mind control is also breaking down simultaneously. So I think we're heading in a good direction. Um, but let's take it like as a final piece of this. I get this question a lot, like, what can we do? Okay, so now that this information is out there, what can we do? So let's talk about that. And I'll just start with, what you just said, which is believe survivors. Okay. Most of us, I mean, the backlash and the fear and the courage it takes to speak out, no one would do that just to be, I don't know, frivolous. That's, silly. But also, I would say we can exit their matrix of control. For example, we can stop patronizing their corporations. We can move from global to local. They want everything globalized. We can bring it back to local. So, their corporate poisoned food. We can refuse it, and we can start going to farms and farmers markets and growing our own and getting chickens or bartering with someone. Like unplug, we can unplug from their miseducational system. We can start finding new ways. Take your kids out of their public school. And for God's sake, don't take any of their pharma products, whether the injectable ones or the other ones, like withdraw from that system entirely. Um, we can kind of begin to not like withdraw our energy. Like if we're plugged in to all of their matrix systems, we can start to unplug and create our own things in a local manner. They don't like that. They don't even like nations. They want a global world. So we can do the opposite. We can become more national and local actually and form like, just get to know people in your community and help each other and talk to each other. I have more thoughts, but I'll stop there and see what you think. Like what else can people do?
Well, I just was reminded that there was actually a school shooting close to where I live, and it was a transgendered person that I think they were around 12 or 13 and killed like 10 people and their mom. I don't even know all the news story. I don't even know. But when I looked at it this morning, I just thought to myself, what the hell would it actually take for people to stop sending their kids to these schools? Not only that they come back a different gender, but that they come back a school shooter, but then also your children are being shot. Like, I don't know why, and I'm sorry if I sound judgmental here, but I don't know like what it would actually take for people to say like, I'm not sending my kid there. I'm going to actually keep them safe by me and like not just send them to these places where they're really, really getting put at risk. And to me, it was just mind blowing. Like, I don't know what it would take for people, like how personal it has to be before they're like, you know what, I think maybe I'm not going to send my kid there. Uh, you know, just as an example, what you're saying about withdrawing from the community. Another point I just want to address, Max, is I work with a lawyer sometimes, and there's evidence and there's proof, and even in a court of law, there is testimony which isn't proven with like DNA or pictures or recording, but there's also corroboration and a balance of probabilities. And so there is so much corroboration right now from survivors. And like I said, retroactively go back and read Kathy O'Brien's book. Like, she's naming these people that are like still on the world stage in the 80s, what they're doing. These are the same people are still up there, on the public stage. Like, and so you can go back and you can corroborate all of this. And like, this actually holds up in a court of law. Like, you don't have to have tape recorded evidence or DNA or something for it to actually be used. And so for people to consider that, maybe look into the legal aspect of like what actually qualifies as proof or evidence forensically. Because you know what, like, there is enough right now for people to reasonably believe, like a jury would reasonably believe that survivors are telling the truth and always have been. And that just keeps getting easier and easier and easier. And so I know for some people, they can't will themselves to believe. It's just hard for them. But like I said, start with just being willing to listen. Start by being willing to look at the evidence, because it's the people that say, oh, that can't be true, I'm not even going to look. Don't do that. Do the opposite of that. Yeah. Say, you know what, I might not be able to understand this or believe this, but I'm willing to just actually look at the facts. Like a judge would say, I'm going to hear both sides. I'm going to listen to the evidence. I'm going to read a survivor's book. I'm going to listen to a podcast. You know what I mean? I'm going to discuss it with my friend, and maybe we could both watch the same one and say, well, what did you think? What, you know what I mean? That's something that anybody can do. It's not asking a lot. It's just asking you to be open and to let go of your blocks and your stubbornness and your unwillingness to deal with reality because you know what, you're not going to avoid it by trying to avoid experiencing it. It's like cowardice never keeps anybody safe. Not knowing something's never going to keep you safe, and you're not. It's not going to ever keep you not affected by it. All of humanity is being tasked with this right now, and so you're right, Max. Any way that you can, stop just being unconscious and going down, it's like a little maze that's already made for you and you're just unconsciously going down it. Like, we need to regain our sovereignty, we need to regain our free will. And this is what happens with each part in a DID system. Each part starts to take responsibility, integrate, listen to other parts, start to hear their stories, start to realize that they didn't have the same information and that they were acting from a place of not knowing all the facts. And this is how a person starts to heal and integrate themselves with DID. And so we can all take actions like that as a human being, like, and just, be willing to speak, be willing to listen, be willing to hear the evidence, even if you don't believe it. Just be willing to communicate. Don't shut down. Don't stay compartmentalized. Don't stay dissociative. Don't stay fractured. Try to integrate with other people, find good people around you. Maybe, you don't like all your neighbors, but I'm sure you could find one. You know what I mean? Like we need to stop this isolation, because that's what they were trying to do during COVID, is like isolate everybody. And so we need to like stop doing that, because that is their greatest fear. And even though people are only doing it online, I honestly believe they probably regret letting the internet public so bad, because there's no way to stop the flow of information. And that is the answer. Number one is getting the correct information.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, understanding that this is systemic and unplugging, I think one solution, which would hurt them, is to unplug from their system. I have said, I don't vote anymore, because I know that everyone that's on the stage is one of them. So it's like, well, I'm choosing this psychopath or that. No, I don't want, it's binary choice too. I don't want either. I don't consent to being ruled over by government or any of these entities. That's slavery, and I don't consent to any of it. Now, it's a totally its own rabbit hole, but even taxation is not actually, we're not beholden to that system, actually. So like, what if everybody in mass refused to give their money to Satan worshiping, baby violating crazies? Like, why are we funding these people, right? And even on a more kind of mundane level, I saw this post by this woman who discovered that this UCLA professor, whose name I'm sorry I don't remember, but that he had emailed Epstein. And she herself, by herself, she put his quote, about infants and the pacifier on a poster board, and she went to UCLA and she protested outside of where he was teaching. And eventually the administration came and told her that they wouldn't renew his contract for next year. Now that's good. That's not enough. They should fire him on the spot. But one person, okay, there's probably many university professors on that list. There's many heads of different companies and corporations, whether it's fashion or music or food or whatever, right? So again, here's my question. Now we know, I mean, we've always known, but now the average person knows, should these people be allowed to just live their normal lives and go in and out of their homes and go here and go there and just live in society? Should that be okay? Like, I don't think these people, I think that we should be everywhere they are. They're everywhere. And the minute you see one of them, start yelling and saying, why are you violating children? What the hell? Like, they should have no more peace on this planet. They're unmasked, and they should have the consequence from the rest of us. I would say we should shame them, but you and I both know they don't feel shame. But they should have they should not be able to live a normal, peaceful existence in society anymore. I get really angry about that, because I think, hey, it's out there now. Why should Bill Gates be able to, I don't know, go to a restaurant and eat in peace? That shouldn't be the case.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I think as a humanity, we need to like an immune system, like engulf these cells and digest them. Like yeah, you're right. They shouldn't get to just hang out in anywhere. And I think that is happening a little bit. So just to end the show on like a more of a positive note, like I just want to actually thank all the people that have listened to the shows that you put out, that I put out, that read survivors' books, that do go and protest, that, stand up to people at work when people call them a conspiracy theorist and say, hey, no, did you guys look at this? And you know what I mean? People that have like had to fight with their own family members or leave jobs or leave relationships or stand their ground and do the right thing when they didn't get anything for it except for more abuse. I just want to thank everybody that has done something, because I'm 99% sure nobody's ever acknowledged what you did or said thank you. And so I just want to send out like an acknowledgement and a thank you, even if no one else knows that you did it, that it does matter. Every single thing matters, even if we're just a little grain of sand in an hourglass, we're all a grain of sand. And so even if you just within your little world and your little circle, if you can just do one thing, convince one person to look at something, speak the truth, like what that one lady did, like that is like, that's all you can do, is what you can with your life and your circle and your will and what power you have in your circle. And so anybody that chose to do that instead of remaining in cowardice and fear or selfishness, I just want to commend you and say thank you. And thank you to everybody that's listened to like our shows and Dose of Truth, and just being willing to actually hear and open their eyes. It's like the opposite of those little monkeys with the see no evil, hear no evil. You know what I mean? Like, thank you to everybody that like took the hands off their eyes and off their ears and off their mouth. And you know what I mean? Like, thank you.
yeah, I think that's a good way to end the show. And I join you in that gratitude for people who, even for people that don't, that when I've said things that don't know me at all, but they send the most beautiful messages. They say, thank you for speaking out. You're so brave. I support you, sending you love, like, thank you for that. Because, we grew up just in hell, and it's nice. It's nice when people are supportive, even if there's nothing that they feel they can do, just acknowledging, that they hear us and that they believe us and that they care and that they're horrified by what we went through. That is a lot. So I agree. Thanks for
Yeah,
bringing that up, Jamie.
that's such a good example, Max, because that's such an easy thing to do, to take 5-10 minutes out of your life and send an email. But like that might just reach that person that day that was having a really low day and just give them the strength. Like, I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like the little stuff does matter. And I think sometimes people get really overwhelmed, like, oh, how am I supposed to take on the Illuminati? Like, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, but you could send an email. You could just, it's like, it's that intention. It's that you put your will behind your intention and you did something and you said something, or you just bothered to like even send that email. It can have such a huge effect, just something that seems so small. It doesn't have to be, something huge to have a huge effect. So that's a really good example, Max, to point that out.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jamie. We did an extra long version of Dose of Truth, but we
We'll
had
probably
to,
have to do another one as
yeah,
the roll
as
comes out
the,
of Epstein, right? I mean,
yes,
this is just
yeah,
the beginning, so I'm sure we'll have to address it again.
yeah, we'll have to address it again, but I'm glad, yeah, we've been asked to address this, so I hope this is good, folks, for you watching. And as always, if you have any questions that you want Jamie and I to address, then, leave them on the chat and we will. So thanks, Jamie. Do you want to say any last words?
Yeah, just thank you. And yeah, thank you for the people that actually do put their comments and do want to have special shows, because we don't always know. Like, it actually is really great when people say, hey, we'd love for you guys to talk about this or that. Like, I mean, thank you to all the people that help give ideas or let us know something they'd like to hear about. It helps us have direction sometimes too. So yeah, thanks for people making their suggestions too.